All right. Wow, let's do this. It's been a while. It's been almost 2 months. A lot has changed, as you might be able to tell by the setup. Hopefully, you guys can hear okay. I've had to mess around with my mic a little bit, try and find a good position for it. It sounds like you can hear me pretty well. I had the volume left up on my computer, but yeah, new setup. I've got chat up on my left. I've got two monitors for those that follow me on Twitter or might have seen my community post. And then I've got my browser, which I'll switch to in a little bit, up on the middle screen. And that's also where I've got my webcam perched. And then I've got my laptop on the right with OBS. So we've got three screens now, right? Three times as much power. And yeah, thank you, Parachamp, saying stream looking good and hope I'm doing well. I am. How about you? Long time no see. Been almost 2 months. Last time I went live was for the conference championship games, but yeah, this was part of my graduation present. As my grandma said, spend it on your future. So I got a little bit of money, and my parents helped me out with this some too, and a little bit of Christmas funds, but. Got a few new monitors, got a webcam, still rocking the same mic. Caden says he can't hear me, or is that a me thing? Well, I don't know. Parachamp, can you hear me okay? Hopefully. It sounded like that it was working for me when I had it up. Yeah, okay, so when I turn my computer up, okay, Parachamp can hear me. Maybe you have your YouTube set to mute. I know that's a thing sometimes. I don't know what to say. Or maybe just try refreshing. But sorry that you can't hear me right now. Parachamp, glad that you can hear me. Yeah, so moved into a new place out here in Cleveland, Georgia now. And I will give you $5 if you can tell me where that is. We are up in Northeast Georgia, up in the mountains, as you might be able to tell by my title. I just started a new job not that long ago, just about a week and a half ago, over at White County News, which is the local newspaper. So covering city commission meetings, local news, covering some features. I got to interview a author who wrote a biography on a baseball player, Johnny Mize. If any baseball fans in here might know him. Hall of Famer, also from Northeast Georgia. He passed away a while ago, but was a very good outfielder for very, very long. And so that was pretty cool, meeting the guy that didn't get to meet Mize necessarily, but got to meet a lot of his family. But Caden saying unmuting you helped a little. And Gabe saying lighting is amazing. Thank you. Welcome to the stream, Gabe. I've got a ring light that I got off of Amazon that I've got perched up on my monitor to the left. Wow, I'm like getting no glare on my glasses. That was a real problem that I had to work through when I made my video because, as you guys could tell, I actually didn't use my iPhone camera for that. I used my webcam because that way I'm able to use this microphone that I'm using right now for the stream. Just use that for the shots of me on camera. What I used to do, believe it or not, what I used to do, right? Because I used to use my phone camera, which is pretty nice, but I didn't have a microphone that worked with it. And so it didn't sound very good. And so what I did, if you go back and you watch my old videos, I have a microphone up on my desk. That's not just for looks. What I did was I opened up iMovie, not even Premiere Pro, iMovie. And I recorded a voiceover while I was recording me with my phone. And then I'd have to go back during post-production and sync up the voiceover with the actual video and just mute the video. And it took so long and it was such a pain in the butt, but that was seriously the best way that I could do it and sound good while getting good quality video. But now I'm able to eliminate that process by just using this webcam, using the light, and then just plugging my microphone into my computer. So that saved a lot of time. The next thing I'm gonna have to work on is color correction for the video. I noticed a few of the colors were off, nothing major, but Professor Shumway would have walked me through that a little bit. But yeah, that no freaking way. No, that is what I did, and it was a pain in the butt, let me tell you. But I'm glad I no longer have to do that. And I seriously, like, I'm looking at myself right now in OBS and on YouTube, and I'm not seeing any glare really on my glasses. But that was something that I really had to like work through because I didn't want it to be like too distracting. And eventually I was like, if there's some glare, that's okay. But yeah, new place, new studio. I actually had to put some soundproof foam things up on my wall. You can't see them, but they're up right in front of me. It's still a little echoey in here, but man, it was bad before. If you ask Caden, when we went on Microsoft Teams calls in here to like discuss videos and stuff, it was bad. The echo was terrible. That's also a big reason why I have this beautiful fluffy rug behind me, and I just wanted to spruce the place up a little bit. But this is the new place. I mean, to the back of me, I've got, all the usual decorations, plus a few extras that I'm able to display now. I see my OBS cam OBS shows like my webcam keeps focusing in and out right now. Probably because I'm moving around so much. Maybe if I move back a little bit, it won't freak out as much, and then I can just move the mic a little bit closer. If you guys can see it, it's no big deal, honestly. But just a personal thing, Henry's in here. Henry, good to see you, man. It's been a while. Saying, what's up, doctor? Welcome to the stream. How have things been going down in the mountains? Hey, we're fellow mountain men now. You got the Rocky Mountains, and I've got Mount Yonah. I don't know if you've ever been to Mount Yonah before, but it is a very challenging but rewarding hike. A lot of fun. Highly recommend if you're ever in Northeast Georgia. But yeah, welcome to the stream. We've got a good crowd in here right now. The way my YouTube is set up, I can only see chat right now, which is kind of interesting. But honestly, I ain't complaining. We got 6 people in here. Not bad. Not bad at all. I don't have too much planned for today. I just have a little off-season talk. In a bit, I'm going to pull up the top free agent list. PFF, they do like their free agent rankings every year, and they rank the players. They've got projected contracts, and free agency is like a week away. So we'll maybe talk about what some good fits for these top guys might be, what these contracts might look like. Maybe sneak a little draft talk in there if you guys are interested in that. To be honest, like I was just planning on, hanging out a little bit. It'd been a while. I've been starving to talk some ball, as Henry and Gabe might be able to tell from my behavior in the group chat, right? It's been a while since I've talked some football. So for sure, some off-season stuff, free agency, maybe a little bit of draft, and then who knows, like I always like to let the crowd have some input too. If there's any games you want to see me play or anything, or if you guys ever have any questions, any takes you want to get off your chest, I'm always all ears. I love just the open house discussion that we have. Also, Henry saying Yona's a great time. It is. Very much enjoy Mount Yonah. I don't think I was prepared though for how big of an endeavor it was, but it was good. All right, you know what? Let's just jump right in, right? I've got the free agents pulled up right here. Let's switch this camera. All right, so free agency is in about a week, I believe, right? New league year starts. Well, let's look this up. NFL. Also, hopefully my keyboard isn't too loud. But yeah, I've got a keyboard and a mouse now too. March 13th, which is exactly a week from now. All right, so week from free agency. We've got a very, very good looking free agent class this year. And I said this earlier today, but even after some of these guys get tagged or maybe brought back, which I think Kyle Duggar got the tag yesterday, there's a lot of talented players out there. I mean, Calvin Ridley's number 25, and I think a lot of years, even though Calvin Ridley wasn't like a superstar this year, you'd be looking at Calvin Ridley being like one of the better players of free agency. He's barely on the first page. Cameron Curl, really good safety. I mean, there's some good players here. So there's a lot to talk about. We've got Pear Champ weighing in here, though, with a nice little comment saying, I think Kirk stays a Viking. I really think it's down between 2 teams at this point. I really do think it's between the Vikings and the Falcons. And, not to be that guy, but I've kind of been beating that drum for a few months now. Ever since Raheem Morris came over to Atlanta, I've been on the Kirk Cousins to Atlanta beat, right? And it makes a lot of sense with the offense that they have, bringing in Zach Robinson. Raheem Morris has worked with them before back in Washington. And just looking at Atlanta's timeline, I mean, we'll get into that when we get to Kirk a little bit more, but I do think it is between the Vikings and the Falcons. I still could totally see him coming back to the Vikings. I don't fully buy that report from Mike Florio where like, oh, his family's ready to move to Atlanta. I don't know. I mean, Mike Florio is not always the most accurate source of information, but he has been doing it for a long time, as he said on Twitter the other day. That was pretty funny. But, oh, snap. We got a few more people in here. We got Mile Marker and Jack in here. Mile Marker saying, made it. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the stream, Mile Marker. And Jack saying, cutting Quandre Diggs has been very bittersweet for me, but cutting Jamal Adams was necessary. Yeah, Seahawks making some moves with their safeties, you know. That was supposed to be sort of the bedrock of their defense for a while. Jamal Adams, woof. I mean, whew. That was a tough trade. That is a rare Jets masterclass right there, being able to get that much capital for Jamal Adams. I mean, it was necessary. There was a small part of me that just wanted to see what Mike McDonald could do with him, but I also understand, like, it's just hard to pay the safety position that much money. And with the way the Seahawks are, they're trying to retool, get a little bit younger, kind of start a new era, sort of like a soft rebuild. I totally get getting rid of him. Quandre Diggs surprised me a little bit. I'm not going to act like I know every single game, like how Quandre Diggs performed this year, but that one kind of surprised me. Maybe you could weigh in a little bit more, but I was like, okay, interesting. But he is getting a bit older too, and again, trying to save money. And Mile Marker saying, can barely hear me. Well, I was moving around my mic a little bit. So you know what? I'm just going to eat my vegetables and I'm going to move the mic a little bit closer. So hopefully you can hear me a little bit better. And I've been messing around with this a little bit here, but we're still getting used to, the new setup also. That might have been a reason why. I actually turned the gain down. But hopefully that's a little bit better. Like, or I could just move it up here a little bit. I don't want it to block my screen too much, but I feel like I can see okay. Okay, good. Saying that that's better. Just needed to mess around with it a little bit. But Jack saying Jamal Adams was very solid when he was fully healthy. The problem is Jamal Adams was fully healthy for like 4 games in his tenure with Seattle. Yeah, injuries were a big problem. You know, people called him Blitz Boy a lot, and like I get everyone wants their safety to be like this center fielder Ed Reed type, but you know what? He was good at blitzing. Like let's not act like he wasn't an excellent box safety. Like he caused a lot of problems, but for how much you sunk into him, you don't want just a blitzer. You know, you don't want Devin White at safety. So I get that. Henry asking who are the players the Jets drafted with the picks. And Jack coming in clutch with the answer, Garrett Wilson and Elijah Vera Tucker, 2 very good players. I mean, Garrett Wilson is a guy who I think eventually will take the leap into being a superstar level wide receiver. Thought it would have happened this year if they had Aaron Rodgers. And Elijah Vera Tucker has turned into a very good offensive lineman, which you can't say about every Jets offensive lineman. One of the lone bright spots up front. But, yeah, a lot of moves. And if you want to talk about cutting players, we'll get into the Bills in a little bit because they made some moves too. But let's get started with Chris Jones. He's the #1 free agent up on this list. And I think for good reason. He's a Hall of Fame level player. He has been a linchpin of now a 3-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs core. He's one of the few guys that's been there for all of them. And to be honest, I would be surprised if he didn't come back to Kansas City at this point. I think it was very telling that the Chiefs made it at least somewhat clear that they were kind of open to shopping L'Jarius Sneed because he's their other big free agent that they have to make a decision on. And I can understand the Chiefs' rationale if they want to prioritize keeping Chris Jones and they say, hey, you know what, we've got Spags, we've got this great defensive coaching staff, we've developed so many great corners. It's a lot harder to find a Chris Jones than it is a L'Jarius Sneed. As great as Sneed is, as young as Sneed is, I can understand them wanting to keep Chris Jones instead. I totally can. I would be surprised if he went anywhere else. Projected 4 years, $30 million a year. That is an insane amount of money for an interior defensive lineman. $80 million guaranteed projected. Again, these are just projections. We don't know the actual number, but I do think he is going to reset the market. I think we are going to be looking at an Aaron Donald-like contract here. How much did Aaron Donald get paid in his most recent contract? He got paid a lot. Yeah, whatever. Good Lord. 3 years, $95 million. $31 million a year. Almost $32 million a year. That for a defensive tackle. That's crazy. But that's about how much Chris Jones is probably going to make. And, you know, the Chiefs might have to get a little creative, but they will make it work. They will find a way. I really do think they're going to bring him home. Mile Marker saying, Jones, I've not forgotten he sat out the first game. He's too expensive for most of us. Yeah, and I, you know, honestly, an interesting fit would be the Lions, but it would be a tall task for the Lions to try and outbid the Chiefs. I do wonder how big of spenders the Lions are going to be, though. But we'll get to the Lions in a little bit here. Jack saying Seattle getting Boye Mafe, Devon Witherspoon, Charles Cross, and Derek Hall for Russell Wilson helped redeem the Jamal Adams mistake. Oh yeah, you want to talk about a bad trade, the Russ trade. My goodness. Oh. Yeah, that was a haul for Seattle right there. That kind of turned their franchise around a little bit. That Russell Wilson trade turned them around just as much as Geno Smith did. The Cinderella quarterback, as I like to say. But they traded Russell Wilson at the right time. My goodness. I feel kind of bad for him. I mean, he's been through the mud this past year, and Sean Payton and everything, and you know, you can have your own opinion on Russell Wilson, and I get that. He's kind of a goofy guy, but it's been a tough year. It's been a tough stint for him in Denver. Not even year. It's been a tough 2 years for him in Denver. But and also saying, you can call me crazy, but Aaron Donald is way overpaid at this point in his career. I get where you're coming from because that is a lot of money for a defensive tackle. But here's what's kind of surprising. It works out for the Rams, and I love that I get an excuse to talk about the Rams here, right? Because this is a team that I've been very high on for a while. Mile Marker saying, love the Cinderella event. Thank you. I appreciate it. The Rams have $40 million in cap space. They can be spenders this offseason. I loved what they did this year, right? Their offense really came to life. This is a team I'm going to talk about a lot with these free agents because in the past, they have been spenders. And yes, they are paying Aaron Donald a lot of money, but really it's only Stafford, Donald, and Kupp that they're paying right now. A lot of those guys are on rookie contracts still. They've got so many good young players that yes, they are paying him a lot. And, you know, it did make an impact, right? They didn't want to get rid of Jalen Ramsey last year, but they kind of had to. Like, the bill did come due. It's not like the Rams got away with it. They were bad for a year. They did have to get rid of guys. But since they just absolutely crushed it in the draft again, they've already cycled back, and they can be spenders this year, which is crazy. But Chris Jones stays put. I think he's getting a lot of money. That's my long-winded version of that. Jack saying the Lions have a lot of players they are worried about, like CJ Gardner-Johnson and Amon-Ra, that they have to pay. That is true. It's coming. But if you're the Lions, you probably have a year or two more, right? And I'd have to go and look at some of their contracts. But the Lions have a little bit more time. Now, it's getting there, right? The bill's going to come due soon, and they're going to have to make a very interesting decision on Jared Goff next year. This is the last year of Jared Goff's contract. And that is going to be a fascinating one. I think they're going to pay him, and I don't hate it because he's been good for them. And they were so close to the Super Bowl this year with him. So I don't hate it, right? You might as well just stick with the guy. I don't know how you could justify to the locker room moving off of him. But they've got paydays coming. Hutchinson, Sewell, Amon-Ra, right? Laporta eventually. I mean, that Laporta and Branch will be a few years from now. Like, you don't really have to worry about that as much. That is the one kind of downside to having a young core. And again, like that's very big brain thinking. Like at the end of the day, like having good young players is good. Like don't misinterpret that. But that is like you do have a short window even with younger players because you can't keep all of them. You want to win while they're all cheap. Gabe saying Dan Campbell rolling eyes. You know, the more that I've sat and digested that, the second fourth down was a bit much, right? The second fourth down, doubling down and doing it again, that was a lot. But I respect it. That's how they got there. That's what they did the whole season. Dan Campbell was not going to go away from what he thought was right, and I respect it. And the players respect it too. Jack saying if Dan Campbell chokes again in the playoffs this coming season, he has to be on a, sorry, I can't see through the emoji. Has to be on a thin leash. Oh, I don't know about that. That is a spicy take right there. What I will say is that keeping Ben Johnson was a big deal. And I think that speaks very highly of Dan Campbell, that for 2 years, Ben Johnson has been such a hot candidate to be a head coach. He's been such a great offensive coordinator, and he wants to continue to work there. I think that speaks very highly of the Lions organization, and it's kind of telling. Like Dan Campbell seems like he would be a sick coach to work with, you know. So I don't think that Dan Campbell would be on a short leash personally. I think he's bought himself many, many years in Detroit, and rightfully so. This isn't Detroit, Eric. This is the Super Bowl. Ugh. Yeah, now you guys know my pain. The Niners game was complete idiocy. Yeah, also I might have pronounced that word wrong. There are a few interesting calls there. I think the timeout was bad too, right? When they were trying to score to cut it to a one-score game and they ran the ball and called a timeout. I had that whole meltdown on stream about that, but I would be interested to see how the Lions look without Ben Johnson, but I think they'll be fine. I think, you know what, Dan Campbell's a good old-fashioned head coach. He's not a stats nerd, or, which is funny, right? Because people think that, like, oh, since he goes for it on fourth down, like, it's like he's an analytics guy. No, he just he played under Sean Payton, and he saw how much it scared the crap out of other teams, and Sean Payton would go for it on fourth down and get it, so he's just a Giga Chad. That's what he is. Henry makes a good point. Campbell was ranked the top head coach in the most recent survey. Yeah, he was. And you know who else got an A+? That's right. KOC. Yeah. Mile Marker says they call our GM Dollar General Holmes. I mean, he is squeezed the most out of these contracts. He's good at his job. I would argue Holmes has been the biggest architect of their success. All right, Kirk Cousins. Let's get into Kirk Cousins. Number 2 ranked free agent. And again, like, not often you see a quarterback of this caliber in free agency. Now, you can think of maybe an example last year where Lamar Jackson was kind of a free agent, but Kirk Cousins is just a straight up free agent. There's no tags to work around. There's no 2 first-round picks you have to give up. If you pay up, you can get Kirk Cousins, and people have varying opinions on him, but I think it's fair to say no matter what you think of Kirk, he is probably somewhere between the 9th and like 13th best quarterback in the league. He is comfortably an above average quarterback. And, you know, it's just not often you can get one of those in free agency. And Henry asked a very good question earlier that I saw but forgot to get to, but I'm going to get to it now. The elephant in the room is Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles. And Henry asked, you know, how much does that dampen his value? He's been... This is a man who's been known to get the absolute most out of every deal he signs. I don't know if it's true that he really wants the guaranteed money again. I mean, who doesn't? But I don't know if it's going to be a deal breaker for him or not. PFF projects 2 years, $40 million average year with $60 million guaranteed, so not fully guaranteed, $80 million in total. And let me tell you, you know, again, I'm a Vikings fan. Famously, my very first video on this channel was me saying that the Vikings should move on from Kirk Cousins. And whether it be Stockholm Syndrome or watching Nick Mullins play or a little bit of both, I'm a little more torn. I certainly would not be opposed to the Vikings bringing him back. I don't think that that would sink the franchise. Like, not that I used to think that would, but I will admit I needed to be humbled a little bit. Losing Kirk for half the season humbled me, and I was like, wow, okay. And also, he kind of balled out this year. He had a really good first half of the year before he went down. He wasn't perfect. He still had a few Kirky games, right? The Panthers game comes to mind, or the Bears game. He was not like Tom Brady, but he was very good this year. And I don't know, man. You just wonder what would have happened if he would have stayed healthy. But regardless, not often you get a quarterback like this in free agency. And Henry's saying, man, how often has a consistent top 10 quarterback hit unrestricted free agency twice? I really don't know. I mean, free agency has only been around since the 1990s. Not very often, because teams don't let him go to free agency. But this man right here, Kirk Cousins, Cole's Cash Kirk, this man knows his worth. And he will play the long game. He will be stubborn. And it's so funny because he's just like this mild-mannered, super Midwest guy, right? He's from Illinois, I guess, technically. But he went to Michigan State, and just like, it's so funny listening to him talk, right? Like, he is such a Midwesterner, but deep down, Kirk O'Chains wants his bag. I can't blame him, right? Get your money while you can. Set your family up for generational wealth. But as I said at the top of the stream, I really do think it is between the Vikings and the Falcons. Henry's saying, I would do that deal as a Falcons fan. Anything longer than that makes me nervous. And I totally get that. I do think it probably is going to be somewhere around 2 years, right? What Kirk wants is guaranteed years. It's less about the total that you see, like the 80 million. He is much more concerned with this number. I think if I was a Viking, if I'm the Vikings, right, I would probably only want 2 years max, maybe even just one. But I just think for the Falcons' sake, right? And I've been beating the Kirk to Atlanta drum a lot. And this, I'm not even saying this is like, oh, I want to get rid of Kirk Cousins. Like, I would welcome Kirk Cousins back. It makes so much sense for the Falcons when you look at the situation that they're in and how they've got all these young playmakers on rookie contracts, and how really it kind of has been building up to this year with the big spending that they did in free agency last year to try and beef up their defense a little bit, and then bringing in Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson to inject some new life into their coaching staff. Like, as Gabe was saying up there, windows are tiny. And he goes on to say that was our chance. Yeah, it got us there. Well, I don't know about that, but you are right that windows are kind of tiny. And I think it could be easy to be the Falcons and think, man, if we get Justin Fields, we're going to be set for the next 10 years with Fields and Robinson and Pitts and London. But you can't keep everyone. You can't, I mean, my Super Bowl blueprint video says, like, the average NFL team keeps about only 35% of their players in a 2-year span. Realistically, and this is kind of a tough pill to swallow, but it can also be liberating, this right here, it might be about as good as it gets for this Falcons core. So you might think, man, we're going all in for Kirk Cousins. Like, really, we're going to go all in? Like, we're probably not a Super Bowl team. That's true. But if you look at it like, you know what, we're going to go all in. We're going to win the division. We're going to win 11 games. And for the first time in the history of our new stadium, we're going to have a playoff game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And we might even win a playoff game. It becomes a lot more fun when you look at it that way. And that's a big reason why I'd welcome Kirk Cousins back to the Vikings, right? If we bring Kirk back, no, we're still probably not a Super Bowl team. But you know what? We're going to ride it out with Kirk. This is his last ride. We're going to try and get in the playoffs. Like, it sure beats going 7-10 with Nick Mullins. So whoever gets Kirk, and maybe the Steelers emerge, right? They were a team that's been in the quarterback market too. They claim that they're happy with their guys. Yeah. Well, I'm not. I am deciding for the Steelers that they should move on from Kenny Pickett. But I just think Kirk to the Falcons makes so much sense. Get him now while you can afford to pay him. In 2 years when the deal expires and he's old and you move on, so what? You're going to have to make tough decisions on guys like Bijan Robinson and Drake London anyways. So might as well just rip the Band-Aid off, do it all at once, squeeze as much out of this young core as you can right now. Kirk gives you the best chance in my opinion. And you know what? His wife has family ties to Atlanta. I think she's from there. I think they actually already own property out in Atlanta, maybe. I might be wrong about that, but Kirk's a family man. That matters to him. So I'm going to say he goes to the Falcons. That's my prediction. But let me catch up with chat here. I've been falling behind a little bit. I'm loving the activity. Gabe saying, I'm a Bucs fan anyways, and I love Kirk Cousins in all caps. And Jack saying, the Falcons are a playoff team last season. If Arthur Smith wasn't head coach, probably, honestly. You know what? I actually am kind of high on Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator. I think he's going to do pretty well in Pittsburgh. I just don't think he was meant to be a head coach. He got hired for that role for a reason, right? The whole joke about him is that he outsmarts himself and he never gets the ball to his best players. I find it kind of interesting. That was never a problem in Tennessee, though, when he was just the OC. Like I don't know the guy, obviously, right? But just his mannerisms at his press conferences and just how he carried himself, it really seemed like the stress of being the head guy weighed on him. And maybe he did outsmart himself a little bit. But I think a fresh start with Mike Tomlin as the head coach there, the Steelers have a lot of interesting weapons. They've got a good offensive line. They really are just like a decent quarterback away from probably being back in the playoffs. And I think Arthur Smith might cook a little bit in Pittsburgh, but he was pretty bad in Atlanta. I think we can all agree on that. Henry saying, I really do like the idea of having a rookie QB developing under a vet like Kirk or maybe even Russ or Brissett. Then we can hit the ground running for the next generation. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, right? Because a lot of people are clamoring for the Vikings to do that. I have such mixed feelings about sitting a guy for a year or two behind a vet, and it's so easy to point to the success stories, which rightfully so, right? There have been some massive successes. Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Patrick Mahomes. You can even go back to when the 49ers went from Joe Montana to Steve Young. That was like the OG bridge quarterback situation. But for every one of those, there's like a Trey Lance situation where like, oh, he sits a year and then he gets hurt and then you just never really know what you have. And all of a sudden, time's up, And, a big plus of a rookie quarterback is that rookie contract. And as lame as it sounds, like, I don't know, I would just like to actually have him play all 4 years. And especially like if I'm the Vikings and I bring back Kirk, that means that I think Kirk is good enough that we can try and win this year with Kirk. We can try and make the playoffs. So then why would we punt our first round draft pick on a guy that's not going to play? If we think that we're good enough to win this year, like a good defensive player from the draft would help us more than JJ McCarthy on the bench. It's so hard to have your cake and eat it too. And like Jordan Love was such a unique situation because he got to sit for 3 years. Aaron Rodgers got to sit for multiple years, right? Because they had like Aaron Rodgers and then Brett Favre were the incumbents, and Steve Young got to sit for a while behind Joe Montana. So I don't know. I am a little weary about that. I've seen the success, I've seen the upside, but I just think for a few team situations, maybe less so with the Falcons, but more so with the Vikings, the thing I'd want us to do the least is bring back Kirk and draft a QB. I think we would be trying to do too much there, having our cake and eating it too, and there's a lot of other things I'd like the Vikings to address. But I do understand that desire. Jack saying, Michael says he either wants the Steelers to get Fields or stick with Rudolph. Fields might be a little interesting in Pittsburgh because I just think they would run him a lot. And you know what? Maybe that's not a bad idea. And, I have my whole soapbox where, Justin Fields can't throw over the middle. It doesn't make sense. Maybe he learns a little bit, right? And I do think that, like, he would make a little bit more sense in Arthur Smith's offense than I've seen him, like, linked to the Rams. It's like, that doesn't make much sense. I don't know. They don't need a quarterback. I get Stafford's old, but just ride it out with Stafford. And I can't picture Justin Fields and Sean McVay's offense, but Fields is a name I've been seeing linked a lot, and I think his market is a little bit cooler than some people might think. I don't think he's going to cost a ton in a trade because everyone knows the Bears want to get rid of him. We'll see, though. Rudolph wasn't bad, I will say. Rudolph was pleasantly surprising this year. Mile Marker saying, many NFC North fans are real unsure about the Vikes. Your team is a real unknown right now. Oh, I know. We really are. We're like the biggest wild card in that division. We're in such a limbo, not even just at the quarterback position, but Defensively, we've got a weird mix of very young players and then some older vets that might be on the way out, like Daniil Hunter and Harrison Smith. Brian Flores came in and had a makeover, and he did an awesome job, but I feel like we've still got a ways to go on that side of the ball. And there's just this Justin Jefferson contract situation that's quietly looming over us. Every day that passes where he's not locked up and extended, I just grow a tiny bit more nervous. I'm not suggesting that we're not going to bring him back. I do like to believe a deal will get done. But just every day that passes, I just get a little bit more nervous. Just a little bit. I'm kind of conditioned to think that he's going to leave, right? Not saying that he will, but Percy Harvin left. Randy Moss left. I mean, they all leave eventually. But we'll see, you know. Even Adam Thielen left, for crying out loud, although that was a bit of a ways later. All right, Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen, who had a fantastic contract year this year. How about career season for Josh Allen, one of the few Jags that actually showed up to the good place? Jacksonville. They cut Darius Williams, by the way, which was a very puzzling move in my opinion. I don't know if they've updated this yet, but Darius Williams should be up here. Someone is going to get a very good corner with him. I'm a big Darius Williams fan. He was like their best corner last season, but one of their better players. But Josh Allen, monster 17.5 sack season. I mean, he'd always flashed potential, right? But he just couldn't ever fully put it together. But he just came to life this year. 3 is high. I'm like, even with the monster season, I would still probably consider Brian Burns, a better player than Josh Allen. Josh Allen definitely had the better season. But, you know, you're splitting hairs when you're like, oh, but Brian Burns should be 3 and Josh Allen should be 5, you know? I don't know where he's going to go. I don't know if Jacksonville brings him back or not. I mean, I'd like to think they do, right? I mean, again, good edge player is a premium, but that's a team in a weird spot, honestly, because what they've got looming over their head is Trevor Lawrence needing a new contract soon, and you got to pay him, right? He did not quite take the leap that I thought he would this year. He was still a little inconsistent. He struggled with injuries. He just wasn't as good as I thought he was going to be. And it was a little frustrating as someone that put a lot of my rep on the line with the Jags, but they are going to have to pay him soon, and he's going to command a lot of money. So you gotta start planning for that. Josh Allen already making a lot, but we got Game Solved in here, Jaguars fan on the channel, saying, I believe they cut Darius Williams because they are changing the scheme to man coverage, which Williams is worse at compared to zone. Okay, that's right. Because, Ryan Nielsen, right? Ryan Nielsen, former Falcons defensive coordinator, came over to the Jags. Great hire, by the way, in my opinion. Ryan Nielsen did a great job with the Falcons last year. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense then. Because, yeah, Darius Williams has always been a zone-heavy guy. He was zone-heavy in Los Angeles with the Rams under Brandon Staley, and he might have played a year with Raheem Morris. Falcons might be a team to watch for Darius Williams, actually. And Henry is saying the Jags are in a sneaky bad spot, in my opinion. Doug Peterson is probably on the hot seat, right? I would have his seat pretty hot. I don't know. I thought he did a rough job this year, to be honest. As someone who was at least somewhat invested in the Jaguars and actually watched a decent amount of Jaguars games, man, I don't know why he's so obsessed with Press Taylor. I just don't get it. It was the same way. It was the same way in Philly. Like, Press Taylor is his right-hand man, I guess. And just the way that the team faltered and their offense was just so off and on this year. They had a few games where it really looked like they played up to their potential, but it was not there for the most part. And it was just short pass. 60% G. Greg Rosenthal made a good point during the season on the Around the NFL pod. Like, it really did look a lot like the Alex Smith Chiefs, who Doug Peterson was the OC for. Andy Reid called the plays, but Doug Peterson was on that staff too. It just check down after check down after check down. And I don't love the way that they used Calvin Ridley. I don't think that they had nearly enough diversity in his routes. There's a lot of interesting charts you can look at for that, but it was rough. And Games makes a very good point. Somewhat, fans are more upset at Trent Baalke GM. And yeah, You know, that man has 9 lives, right? Because he had a really rough stint in San Francisco where, you know, with the Harbaugh 49ers, Jim Harbaugh just hated him, and those two were always at odds. And he had some rough picks in there and just gave out some bad contracts. And in Jacksonville, honestly, it's been rocky for him a little bit too. So yeah, I totally understand how fans are more upset at Trent Baalke because but yeah. Jack saying Shad Khan should grow his mustache more to fix the Jags issues. And saying sounds a lot like Shane Waldron. Yeah, he's over at the Bears now. Classic. But I'm going to be honest. I guess if I had to pick, I would say Josh Allen comes back games. I don't know if you agree with me on that. I don't know what the pulse is right now around Jaguars Nation, but I mean, there's always teams that could use an edge. Sorry, very hard-hitting analysis. I know. I was not prepared to talk about Josh Allen this early. T. Higgins. Bengals franchise tagged him. I don't think that they're going to trade him. He might be gone next year, though. I think this might be T. Higgins' last year in Cincinnati. I was a little surprised that they did tag him, but I totally understand that the Bengals are another team that are kind of all in a little bit this year because Burrow's contract is going to kick in soon. They have a sneaky amount of free agents, and, you know, this is kind of like one of their last shots with this core of like, let's ride it out. We've got Burrow, Higgins, Chase is still cheap, right? I don't know where they're free agency. Look at it. They've got a decent, and it's not all huge names. So like DJ Reader, very good player. Tyler Boyd, not the player he once was. He's a free agent. Chidobe Awuzie, good starting corner. Jonah Williams, a starting tackle. T. Higgins, they tagged, but Irv Smith. Then you start to get down a little bit, but they've got some important pieces that are free agents this year, and I don't know that you can bring all of them back. And then next year, it gets even tougher. T. Higgins will be a free agent again. You'll have to pay Jamar Chase most likely. Mike Hilton, Ted Karras, Joe Mixon. I mean, man, like, and all this while Burrow gets more and more expensive as the years go on. So I certainly don't hate the idea of let's just tag T. Higgins. Let's rock it out one more year. Please, Burrow, stay healthy. We're a good team when he is. Let's do this. Henry saying, would love to get your thoughts on the Bills' cuts tonight at some point too. And Jack saying the Bengals have to go all in before they have to pay Jamar Chase, so I like the move of tagging Higgins. Yes, great minds think alike. You know what? Let's just do it. Let's talk about the Bills now. I see Jack weighing in on the Bills too. Let's talk some Bills. They were busy today. They were very busy. Oh, I like the headline. Bill comes due. That's a bar. That's crazy. Oh, they cut Mitch Morse too? Wow. Okay. So the big one, right? The big header is we've got Grace and Truth in here saying, let's go. Welcome back to the stream, Grace and Truth. Good to have you in here. Wow. We got the whole gang back in here now. 11 people. That's amazing. Look at that. All right. Man, it kind of feels like the end of an era for the Bills in that I think they will be fine, and I'll get to that. I think they'll be fine. I don't think the Bills are going to be bad. I don't think it's like over. But this is going to feel like probably a very different team next year. So the Bills cut a lot of guys to try and get out of their cap situation, which it was kind of rough. So they cut Trey White. That's the big one. Also Jordan Poyer, which I think if you're a Bills fan, that one's got a sting because he's been around for so long, and it's heartbreaking that he never got a ring, right? He was the guy that got injured. Was it his ribs? And he wasn't allowed to fly. This was back in 2021, I think. He wasn't allowed to fly because of an injury, and the Bills are playing the Chiefs. So this man drove to Kansas City so that he could play against the Chiefs. I mean, that's just so baller. 7th round pick. Started with the Browns, I believe, right? Eagles, actually. That's crazy. I did not know he started with the Eagles, but yeah. Wasn't really a big-time player with the Browns, but then broke out with the Bills, and he has been a linchpin of this defense for so long. Him and Micah Hyde, such an incredible safety duo, and now he's gone. It stings. It stings. That one's tough. And then Mitch Morse, their starting center. Also was with the Chiefs for a little bit. Wow, they didn't even have his team history. They hate linemen. Also Deontay Hardy, who was their return man, and I believe he was the guy that returned the punt for a touchdown in the Dolphins game to win them the division this year, right? So that's not nothing. One of the biggest plays of the season for him. Wow, this was his first year with the Bills. Yeah. So a lot of cuts. 2 of their captains gone. So here's what I'll say, right, about how I don't think it's over. And I mentioned this in the group chat earlier. I don't think the Bills are going to miss Trey White as much as some might think. He really hasn't played a whole lot in the past few years, if we pull up his stats a little bit. I mean, he only played a few games this year, and then he got hurt. He played in only 6 games last year. And to be honest, the Bills' defense was pretty good without him. Like, they've done a good job of developing. Let's just pull up their depth chart here. They've done a good job of developing guys in their secondary, and maybe Kaiir Elam hasn't turned into quite the player that they hoped he would be. But I don't want to call Trey White overrated or anything, but Trey White really hasn't been Trey White for a few years now. And part of it has just been injuries. Like, he just hasn't been healthy. It's a shame, honestly, because he was so good in his prime. And it sounds weird to say in his prime for a guy that's still not 30 years old yet, but I think at this point, these days are gone. That's what I'll say. And I don't hate them at all for trying to make money by getting rid of him. I think people are going to be shocked with how little he gets with his next contract. I'm not saying he's washed or cooked, but he's not the player he once was. And they're going to be fine at corner without him. They traded for Rasul Douglas. Christian Benford was really, really good for them this year. And then they've still got Teron Johnson, one of the best nickel defenders in the game. I mean, their corners are going to be just fine. I am really high on this Bills defense, quite honestly. They were very good while being injured last year. I mean, Matt Milano, arguably their best player, their best defensive player, was injured for most of the year. Wasn't Daquan Jones injured? I know they had some injuries up front and then late in the season. I mean, they were just being held together by lint and bubblegum, and they just had so many injuries, but they still played pretty well. I thought Sean McDermott did an excellent job taking over as their defensive play caller this season, and that was a big reason why they were able to kind of right the ship a little bit at the end of the season and go on that run. And, you know, I think that they have done a good job of eating their vegetables, getting rid of these cap casualties now, just instead of trying to run it back one more year with guys like Poyer and White. Like, yeah, they might help a little bit. Maybe the Bills are still in a bit of a window. But as long as they've got Josh, they should be a good team, right? So they're going to try and retool, and then maybe in a year or two from now, they're going to be back at the level they were in like 2020, 2021. It might take them a year or two. They'll still probably be a good team next year. I still will probably actually pick them to win the division. I like some of the youth that's coming in, though. Khalil Shakir was a guy that really came on for him late. A lot of people are thinking Gabe Davis might be gone. Could see it, honestly, just letting him walk. Stephon Diggs has been a big trade candidate. I think they might keep him, but again, Shakir coming on has been good because now they've got some youth at the wide receiver position. They invested a lot in offensive line last offseason, right? They drafted Osiris Torrance. They also signed Connor McGovern, who's fine. But, and they drafted Dalton Kincaid. I think this Bills team has done a good job of getting younger. And it might be another down year for them. But at this point, I think we can all agree a down year for the Bills is like 11 wins. So, and I've got a Dolphins take that I've got cooking in the chamber a little bit. Let's just say I don't know that. I think they're going to win the division again. I think the Bills are going to win the division again. I don't think any other team is quite at their level. But yeah, busy day for the Bills, but I think smart moves overall. They have been a pretty well-run organization recently, and even though it's not always fun to cut guys who've been around for a while, it was probably the right call. Man, I've been talking a lot. I need some water. But Jack, I love that comment. I guarantee Trey White goes to the Eagles. It is such a Howie signing. It really is. And they're going to get him. And all of NFL Twitter is going to be like, oh, Howie Roseman, you done it again. How does he always do it? How does he get away with it? You know, oh, Howie Roseman, the genius among us. And then Trey White is going to be like a league average corner. Like, remember when they got Kevin Byard near the trade deadline and everyone was like, oh, or when they got Shaq Leonard. Oh, I say that Howie Roseman is a great GM, but I'm not a big Eagles enthusiast. And it was, man, just last offseason, it was all about how did the Eagles make the Super Bowl and somehow get better? We'll see. I say that. They still beat the Vikings this year, though, but good times. We'll get to Brian Burns in a sec. Let's check chat here. Henry saying, definitely think Diggs will get traded given how deep the draft is at wide receiver. You know, I hear you. This is an excellent wide receiver class. NFL draft wide receiver. I don't know why I'm talking out loud. This is a very good class. Now, I do think it's going to be hard for them to get one of the top guys. Now, maybe you look at someone in this range, right? Like they're not getting like Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors or anything, obviously. I don't want to turn off my ad blocker. Sorry. We're going to use this one instead. But there's a lot of depth too, and there's some guys that I like in here that I think might make a lot of sense. I've got a hot take about Keon Coleman, and that I actually kind of like Keon Coleman. I know everyone's been hating on him recently because his 40 was bad, but I'm staying strong with the Keon Coleman crew. That's what I'll say. I actually kind of like Keon Coleman, but there's a lot of good players in here. So there might be some interesting options. I think if the Bills feel good about one of the guys they could get with their first round pick and they get a good offer for Diggs, I could see a trade because that would also help a lot with their cap situation. And you know what? When Joe Brady took over, Diggs was not quite as big of a part of their offense. I guess I could have just done this. Like, first of all, they just became a lot more of a run-heavy team. But Diggs, I'm not going to say Diggs is washed either, but I don't think he's in his prime anymore. I still think he's a very good receiver. He can still probably be a 1 on a lot of good teams. But it was telling, like, he was not like that dude down the stretch, and he did have a rough game against the Chiefs in the playoffs. He kind of had a rough playoffs overall. But it's a lot of sub 100 games in here and just not being featured as much. So if they could get a good offer, Jack is saying if they could get a first, they have to take that and run. Oh, absolutely. I think if you're the Bills, you would strongly consider taking a second for him. Henry says he'd fetch closer to a third. I think they could get a second. I mean, Diggs is still only 30, which is hard to believe. It feels like he's been around for a while now. But if we look at some of the recent trades, like, now he's not quite as good as Devontae Adams, but the Devontae Adams fetched a first. DeAndre Hopkins, actually, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins did fetch a first. I think it might have been a second. But I think Diggs could get a second. That's what I'll say. Like, if I was the Chiefs, I would give up a second for Diggs in a heartbeat. I don't think the Bills would ever trade him to the Chiefs, though. That would make too many people mad. Brandon Beane would have to duck and hide. Mile Marker asking, what did you think of Jason Kelce's goodbye announcement? I'll be honest, I didn't see the full thing, but I saw he was crying. And you know what? I do love me some Jason Kelce. He seems like a genuinely good dude. One of the great players of our generation. Absolute, no question, first ballot Hall of Famer. And you know what? He was an Eagle for life, and I can respect the heck out of that. The game is going to miss Jason Kelce. I'm going to miss Jason Kelce. Long live Jason. Oh. He tried to get one more before he went out. It was tough. He came up just short, but he was a grinder, man. Gotta love it. Jack saying, I don't know. You see how much the Packers got for Adams. The Bills know they could get something similar. Oh, yeah. I mean, I do think at the end of the day, they will probably, if they were to trade him, they would get a second. And saying Jason Kelce has to be the most likable Eagle ever. Yeah. Universally praised. All right. Brian Burns. Here we go. I, you know what's funny? It was about a year and a half ago, right? I think so. My timeline is a little jumbled. Remember when the Rams tried to trade for Brian Burns and everyone was like, what the heck are they doing? They're giving away more first round picks? Man, the Panthers saying no. That was a bad idea. I guess they did tag Brian Burns, right? Yeah, I did forget about that, and I'm seeing that now. And I think someone in chat was saying that earlier. Burns cannot seem to escape Carolina. Poor guy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So they're probably going to get him for one more year, unless it's a tag and trade. Honestly, Carolina, maybe it would be in your best interest to trade by Brian Burns. They could have had a haul for him, and then they didn't do it. And they are adamant that Brian Burns is adamant that he's not going to sign a long-term deal with him, right? He said like they have not been in communication over an extension. They tag him, and man, he's just so good. Henry knows, right? Saying Brian Burns is a future star. I would move heaven and earth to get him. I think a lot of teams would move heaven and earth to get him, right? Unfortunately, the Panthers probably won't trade with the Falcons. That would be shocking. I don't know, man. Here's a hypothetical, Henry. Would you do this if you were the Falcons? I might. Would you offer pick 8 for Brian Burns straight up? I think I might, because edge is such a big need for Atlanta. You would be getting a legitimately awesome edge player. I mean, just pretend like you're drafting Brian Burns 8th overall. I think I would do that. And I think the Panthers would have incentive to do that with how sick this wide receiver class, how obviously badly they need a wide receiver, and they don't have a first round pick. They don't have a first round pick, right? If you're the Falcons, you can say, hey, give us Brian Burns and you'll have a shot at Rome Odunze. Like, oh, that trade actually makes so much sense. I don't think it's going to happen, obviously, because the Panthers seem to be stubborn about him, and maybe they think they can gaslight him into signing an extension if, like, they do something. I don't know, but that trade would actually make so much sense now that I say that out loud. Like, that would be a perfect trade for both sides. The Panthers can get a first-round pick back. The Falcons get a premium edge rusher and solve one of their biggest holes on their roster, and they steal from a rival. But I don't think it's going to happen. But no, Brian Burns is so obviously good. And I mean, he's had big seasons before. Like, you might look at like 8 sacks and be like, but he's just such obviously a good player. He just jumps out every time you watch a Panthers game, and I would love to see him go somewhere where he can truly shine. That was like my dream signing this offseason was Brian Burns to the Rams, right? Because like they have the money. The Rams can be spenders now. They tried to trade for him a few years ago. Go get him in free agency now. But then the Panthers tagged him. Tough, but Jack saying, I really don't know what the Falcons are targeting at 8, so that trade makes sense to me. They are in an interesting spot at 8. They could go wide receiver if they feel so inclined, which would be ironic given how much they've put into their skill positions over the past 2 years. But they could use another wide receiver. They really could. I don't think Neighbors will be there at 8, but if he was, I think you take Neighbors. Because I think that's the one thing they're missing in their wide receiver room is a true burner, a speedster that could just melt your face off. And that's what Neighbors is. I don't think he's going to be there, though. You could go quarterback if you really like one of the guys there. Maybe McCarthy or Daniels if he's there. Or maybe if you want a quarterback, you can trade back. Or you could go edge. There's some good edges out there. Jared Verse, Dallas Turner are the 2 big ones. I think that would make a lot of sense, too. So they definitely have some options. They are in a good spot to have the 8th pick, I will say. It's nice. I'm a little jealous, not going to lie. But Henry says probably not because he would just need a big money deal. Trading for him only gets you 1 year. And I want to draft Dallas Turner at 8. I totally get that. I like Dallas Turner a lot. Please don't take him at 8 because I want to take him at 11. But I don't think he'll be there at 11 at this point. He was a beast at Alabama. He lit up the combine. His measurables are just glorious. And, it's never really a bad idea taking an Alabama edge player. I don't know. They seem to coach him pretty well over there. Um, Dallas Turner makes a lot of sense if you want to save money. And I get that, like, yeah, you'd have to turn around and pay him. But it's tempting. It's tempting. But I get that. I totally get that. You'd get 1 year and then you'd need to pay him. But, could you imagine? Game Solved asking, what do you think will happen to Danielle Hunter this offseason? I wonder where they have him on here. 12. Okay. Well, let's just talk about Danielle Hunter since he got brought up. And this is my channel and I'm a Vikings fan. And I actually want to talk about Danielle Hunter a little bit. I would like to think he gets brought back. Because, to be quite honest with you, if he does not get brought back, I legitimately think the Vikings would have the worst pass rush in the league. And this is not even me just being like, oh, woe is me, my team is so bad, but man, let me just pull up the Vikings depth chart for you. Here's a fun question for you to ponder while I pull this up. The Vikings currently, at this very moment that we speak, they have 2 edge players under contract, 2 guys that they know will be on the team next year. Who do you think those 2 players are? They have 2 edge players under contract. That's it. Right? Danielle Hunter's the big one. He's a free agent. And a fun fact about Danielle Hunter, because he had a big year again this year. He's finally healthy for the first time in a while. Had a career high in sacks. His 16.5 sacks were the highest percentage of sacks for a team in the NFL. TJ Watt was second. Like, he accounted for the highest percentage of Steelers sacks. But Danielle Hunter accounted for, I don't know what the exact total was, but he accounted for the largest percentage of his team's sacks. Our pass rush was Danielle Hunter. That was it. And even for a team that blitzed as much as we did with Brian Flores, we just could not get to the quarterback. So I think that keeping Danielle Hunter is a high priority this offseason. And even if we do keep him, I would like us to address edge because it is just rough. I've kept you guys in suspense long enough. Let's pull up this depth chart. The 2 guys under contract at edge for the Vikings are Pat Jones and Andre Carter. That's it. That's it. Look at this. Look at this. Danielle Hunter's a free agent. DJ Wanham's a free agent. Marcus Davenport's a free agent. It's Pat Jones and Andre Carter. That's it. You can't tell me that's not the worst pass rush in the league. It was bad last year, even with Danielle Hunter. So I think that this is a massive priority. Oddly enough, as much as I was saying, I'd love Kirk back and he would be great, I honestly, genuinely would rather bring back Danielle Hunter than Kirk Cousins because we can keep Hunter for longer. He's extremely important. Obviously not quite as important as a quarterback. And we need pass rush so badly. It was a problem. It was something that got exposed badly by any decent offense that we faced. As great as Brian Flores is, and man, he tried his best to squeeze every drop out of this defense that he possibly could. He can't do everything. We need to keep some good players on defense, and Danielle Hunter's our best one. I think we need to pay up for him. I would rather pay up for Hunter and JJ and let Kirk walk than keep Kirk and JJ and let Hunter walk. I would say JJ is priority 1, Hunter 2, and Kirk 3, which is weird to say, and it's not even me saying, oh, we should let Kirk go. I'm not opposed to bringing him back, but we do have some work to do. We're not a bad team by any means, but we do have some work to do. If he doesn't go there, I hate to keep linking the Falcons to not only former Vikings but edge rushers, but the Falcons would be a genuinely interesting spot for him. I mean, who else has some cap space that could maybe pay up for him? And who would be like a fun team, right? Like maybe the Texans, right? Isn't Danielle Hunter from the state of Texas? Well, he's from Jamaica. But I think he grew up in Texas, didn't he? Maybe not. But the Texans would be a fun fit. Put him next to Will Anderson. I know Jonathan Grenard is a free agent too, so they have to make a decision with that. Oh, I don't think he'd go to the Lions. And like it's not like the Lions desperately need edge, right? They've got Hutchinson. The Rams are a candidate. The Falcons. Remember when Danielle Hunter was linked to the Jaguars a lot in trade talks? I don't think that'll happen. They've got their own issues, or maybe just like the Commanders will just pay a crazy amount of money for him since they have cap space and they need edge rushers because they let both of theirs go. So who knows? But that's my thoughts on Danielle Hunter. Please bring him back. We need him. We desperately need him. And we'll get to some more Vikings talking a little bit with this guy. But this is maybe a pipe dream. Who knows, though? It kind of makes sense. Jack saying, I feel like Kirk is very replaceable, as crazy as that sounds. You know what's crazy? I kind of agree with you. Not, I would say very replaceable is strong, but also I think that if you replace him with like an average quarterback, like a Jacoby Brissett, I just think a lot of people would be surprised with how good our offense would look. And I think that this man right here, Nicholas Clayton Mullins, is the perfect example of what that could look like. And now hear me out. Obviously, Nick Mullins is garbage, right? Here's the thing though, right? Nick Mullins has this incredible bozo gene. He's always had it. He's always been the king of the interception. I mean, look at these interception totals. Like, this dude is playing 8 games and throwing 12 picks, or 8 games and 10 picks. Like, he's just always, I respect the confidence. I respect that he believes in himself. But respectfully, Nick Mullins should just believe in himself a little bit less. Just a little bit. Here's the thing, though. When he was not royally screwing up, when he was not being a complete bozo, the Vikings offense looked pretty good. And remember, this game, he only came in like in the middle of the game. He was not the starter, so his numbers were a little bit lower, but he looked obviously better than Jaren Hall. But the Vikings offense was kind of moving the ball a little bit. And when you've got KOC as your offensive-minded head coach, you've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and a great offensive line, there is a very strong infrastructure there offensively, or if you want to cut cost at quarterback, again, you're probably not winning the Super Bowl, but if you want to buy yourself some time, maybe wait until you get a little bit better situation to go upgrade at quarterback where you're not at pick 11 and you might have to reach or trade up. If you just want to buy yourself a year or two, I think they could totally, take a flyer on a vet or a bridge quarterback. Sam Darnold is a name I've seen some, and again, it's going to be a tough sell on the fan base. Like, really? You're going to go from Kirk Cousins to Sam Darnold or Jacoby Brissett or Russell Wilson, as I'm seeing Jack saying? Like I get fans would be upset, but I think it might work. Russell Wilson, I'm a little more on just because one of his big things too is he's kind of struggled to throw over the middle of the field, and he doesn't quite seem like a KOC type quarterback, but Jacoby Brissett, call me crazy, Sam Darnold, again, we might be laughing, but I think that Sam Darnold would be decent on the Vikings, I don't know. And he looked solid with the Panthers. Sam Darnold's not awful, I don't think. But it would be a tough sell that yep, Sam Darnold's our quarterback. So I get that rationale too. Justin Madubuike. We're not going to get through all these. We're talking a lot, but that's okay. We'll just hit some interesting ones here. Justin Madubuike, I feel like he has to come back to the Ravens, right? Unless, and maybe you might like this, Jack, unless he goes to Seattle, reunites with Mike McDonald. Here's what I'll say. Again, I'm not trying to be mean. I like Justin Madubuike. I think he's a great player. He had a good season this year, and he was a beast in the playoffs for the Ravens. I think he's getting a tad bit too much gassed up. I think you can look at him get 13 sacks and be like, whoa, 13 sacks for a defensive tackle. And it's true. It was very impressive. He was a good player this year. A lot of this is Mike McDonald. This is a Mike McDonald stat. I might have to go back and retweet this a little bit for context later. And I liked a tweet from Ted Wynn of The Athletic, who does a lot of great breakdowns, right? And he was doing the breakdown of a Madubuike sack. I can't remember what game it was from. It might have been the Seahawks game, actually. But it was just this beautifully designed stunt where Roquan Smith essentially set a screen and took up 3 linemen at once, and all Madubuike had to do was go around him, and he just had a free run at the quarterback. It was so well designed. And again, Madubuike was a very good player, but some of those sacks were like that, where it was just Mike McDonald just cooked out of his mind, and Madubuike just had a free run, it's worth something that 1 sack, 2 sacks, and then Mike McDonald comes and he goes for 5.5 and then 13. Again, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a 13-sack type of player, though. So I think the Seahawks getting him would make sense because clearly Mike McDonald knows what he's doing with him. I think if he came back to the Ravens, though, I don't think he'd have 13 sacks again. He might have like 7, which is still very good, but I would be careful paying him too much. $23 million is a lot. I don't know. I would rather have Christian Wilkins. I would put Christian Wilkins above Madubuike on this list personally. And Christian Wilkins is like my dream Vikings signing. Like if the Vikings were going to sign one free agent that wasn't like just re-signing a player, bringing back their own, it's Christian Wilkins. Again, you want to talk about a problem on this team. The front is just rough. I mean, Harrison Phillips is like our only solid player, and he's like average. And, he'll probably be back. But Dean Lowry in the year 2024 as a starter? It's rough. I mean, we saw a lot of Jacqueline Roy this year. We did. So it is a dire need. Christian Wilkins is such an unbelievable player. And here's what I'll say. Here's why it makes sense, and it's not even me just being like, ooh, we're going to get the best player at our biggest need. He played with Brian Flores before. He played for him for a number of years in Miami. That's what I'll say. It makes a lot of sense. We might have to get a little creative to make the money work. Christian Wilkins is going to the Vikings. That's my Christian Wilkins take. Let's go. Henry asking, where do you think Baker ends up? I'm going to say Tampa. I like to think that Tampa Bay will bring him back. I mean, it was just such a good year for him last year. And I know his man Dave Canales is gone now, but they brought back Mike Evans. And I struggle to think of where else Baker would go. I mean, the Steelers, that would be kind of fun, actually. Baker on the Steelers getting to play the Browns twice a year. A ticked off Baker versus the Browns. That might be fun. Baker's at his best when he's a little ticked off, when he's a little doubted. So I think if he were to go somewhere else, I don't know if the Steelers would do that. Because, again, they just seem to be so insistent and like, we're going to roll with the guys we have. And I guess that's just how they do things. And I'm not going to be one to question Mike Tomlin or anything. But, man, are we really going to do Kenny Pickett again? Are we going to try and make it happen again? Or I guess Mason Rudolph? I don't know, man. But I'm going to say that he actually just comes back. I think it makes the most sense for both sides. Because I genuinely don't know what Tampa would do if they didn't bring back Baker. Because they pick low in the draft too. They want a playoff game. So I don't know what they would do. You gotta bring him back. Maybe it's not like, woo, Tom Brady all over again. But again, not every team can win the Super Bowl. Sometimes you just got to be like, you know what? 9 wins can be fun sometimes. And I have to tell myself that sometimes because I'm like, man, I just want to see the Vikings win 1 Super Bowl in my lifetime. Just one. Maybe one day. But until then, I'll enjoy our fraudulent 13-win seasons and then losing to the Giants in the playoffs while watching it at Harrah's. Well, that guy in the Giants hat is like, whoa. Caden with a good question. Opinion on Lance to Minnesota. That's been the rumor recently, right? It always comes back to this, right? And I was kind of on maybe the Vikings should trade for Trey Lance last season before he went to the Cowboys. I am going to stand on business, as they like to say, put the money where my mouth is. We still don't know what Trey Lance is. And maybe it's just because of this and this, right? I recognize that this is a part of it. I am not going to deny the allegations. Like, I was wearing an NDSU hoodie this morning. I get it. I just think that there still maybe is something here, and we really don't know who he is, right? He has made... Where'd it go? I was looking at it this morning. He has made 4 career starts. How can we confidently say, like, we know exactly who Trey Lance is? And it can be easy to say, like, oh, well, the 49ers saw him in practice every day. There's a reason they didn't play him. Tyreek Hill saw Patrick Mahomes in practice for a year, and he said he thought Patrick Mahomes stunk. Like, you just don't know. You just do not know. And he was ironically enough, I honestly, in hindsight, him going to the 49ers was actually a terrible situation. Not because of the infrastructure, right? Because they had Kyle Shanahan and all these great weapons, and you'd think that's the best spot where a quarterback can go. But because the 49ers spent so much to trade up and get him, because they were a team that found themselves in a Super Bowl window and they made the NFC Championship game with Jimmy. The expectation was that Lance was going to immediately come in and be so much better. And then he got 4 games because he got injured so much, right? I mean, he did not look great in those games. I will say, like, it's not even like he looked amazing in those games, but he barely got to play. And then he gets injured again. And then Brock Purdy comes in and lights the world on fire, and you can't go away from Brock Purdy. He never got a full season. He has played about a quarter of a season's worth of football. And there's just so much to like about him, from his athleticism to his arm talents. And not only that, he is an extremely, extremely smart and sophisticated quarterback. I can confidently say this as someone that watches and follows NDSU football. North Dakota State's offense is hard to run. It's a lot of under center, like pro style stuff where a lot of it is on the quarterback's shoulders. Did you know Trey Lance called his own protections at NDSU as a freshman? That's something that a lot of NFL quarterbacks aren't comfortable doing. I mean, that was like the big thing with, ironically enough, Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl, right? That big play where Chris Jones came in unblocked and Tony Romo was like, Brock Purdy will get it with time. He's young, he can't quite call his own protections like that. Trey Lance was doing that as a freshman in college. He called his own protections. I mean, it really, there are a lot of overlaps between like a Shanahan style offense and what NDSU did. Obviously NDSU was a little bit more power based, but it was a lot of under center stuff and trusting the quarterback to make the right read. And he's still only 23 years old. Like, I really think that there is at least something there. And I'm not saying he's going to turn into Josh Allen or anything, but I think, and honestly, the Vikings are like the best spot where he could go with the style of offense that they run with all the under center stuff and with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and Kevin O'Connell as his coach. If Trey Lance was going to happen somewhere, it probably would be Minnesota, and I would be on board. I would be on board. You know what? If it goes poorly, if he's bad, like if he gets traded to another team and he's bad, I will take the L. He was a bust. He never panned out. He feasted in the FCS, whatever, right? But I'm not going down just yet. And I'm with you, Henry. I would love Lance to Minnesota too. I think that is the spot that genuinely would make the most sense for him. Tyler's in here. Tyler, what's going on, man? How you been? Been a while. Good to have you in here, Tyler. Saying Dr. Pigskin, have a nice little wholesome moment between Tyler and Henry right there. Look at that. A little Athens reunion. I love it. Oh, yes. Henry says, you got to wonder then why the Niners traded him for so little. Yeah, I mean, it's fair, right? Again, like there are a lot of red flags. I'm not going to deny it. I'm just, as they once said, it's hard to see red flags when you're wearing rose-colored glasses. Or something like, it was like a BoJack Horseman quote. I get that. There are a lot of red flags. I'm going to ignore them one more time, though. I'm ready to be hurt by Trey Lance. I can take it. Here's what I'll say, though, because there's another thing that people said was, oh, well, why is he third string for the Cowboys behind, why is he not their backup? Why did he never play when Dak came out? Because Cooper Rush is a pretty good backup. Cooper Rush is a lot more familiar with the offense. And honestly, regardless of what you think of Trey Lance's hypothetical talent, if I was the Cowboys, yeah, Cooper Rush has played a lot with Dallas before. He knows the receivers. He knows the offense a lot better. If Dak did get injured, I probably would feel better about Cooper Rush coming in the middle of the third quarter than Trey Lance. So that's what I'll say. Trey Lance being third on the depth chart does not mean he's garbage and terrible, in my opinion. Maybe he is, but I don't think it's just because of that. All right. That was my Trey Lance to Minnesota thing. I want to see it happen, genuinely. I don't know. Tyler says, I'm good, just living. And what are your thoughts on Brock Bowers and his potential? Ooh, I love it. A little draft question here. Brock Bowers is a player that we had the privilege of seeing a lot over at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. Got some UGA stuff up behind me. And, you know, there's been a lot of interesting Brock Bowers discourse over on Twitter recently. You've got a lot of smart people saying, well, actually, Brock Bowers should not be taken in the first round because you're not going to be saving as much relative to position with his rookie contract. And first round tight ends have been bad. Have you ever considered that Brock Bowers is good, however? Have you, sometimes drafting a good player is a good thing. And while I think that maybe some of the hype around him has died a little bit, hype is in top 5, he might not go top 5 anymore. Team he was linked to a lot was the Chargers. I don't think he'd go to the Chargers at 5. He might not go top 10. I think he still goes top half of the first round, though. And the production and tape just speaks for itself. You want to talk about a guy that can do it all. Just an absolute monster as a receiver for UGA, right? Just look at this ridiculous stretch right here. And then he gets hurt. Well, no, is this what? No, he got hurt in this game. But he's been doing this since he was a true freshman. He's a threat as a runner. You can put him in the slot or out wide if you want. I think technically he measured in at 6'3" at the combine, and I know his height and weight is a bit of concern. I don't think he's a great blocker by any means. I don't think he's a liability, but he's not like Gronk as a blocker. He's not like Gronk or Kittle, but he is an absolute monster as a receiver. And you know who my Brock Bowers comp is? Genuinely, no trolling. And I think he's a little bit taller than him, but just the way they play and their versatility and how they can line up in the backfield and even be a threat as a runner, I am not joking when I say this is my comp, right? I'll let you think for a sec. Some of you might know what's coming. I genuinely think he's an Aaron Hernandez-like player. Seriously. Where's his height? Okay, so he's got about 2 inches on Aaron Hernandez, but just with how big of a threat they are with the ball in their hands as a rack guy, as someone that you can line up in the backfield as a runner, can run routes out of there, can put him in the slot. I don't know, man. I got to watch Brock Bowers for 3 years at UGA. There is a lot of Aaron Hernandez in his game, and that is a compliment. Let's just hope he doesn't kill anyone. If you see Brock Bowers at a nightclub, do not spill water on him. It will not go well for you. Sorry, that was a little mean, but anyways. Jack saying Brock Bowers is a generational talent at tight end, in my opinion. His intelligence and grit as a player is something I have never seen. Nah, he's a beast. He is on the level of Kyle Pitts as a prospect, and I think Pitts, being the experience he has been in Atlanta, will probably turn teams off from taking him in the top 5, which shout out Henry for being right about that. Even though Pitts has been a good player in my opinion, I think it's easy to forget how great he was his rookie year, and then he gets hurt, and then it's been the disaster with Arthur Smith, and he also had Marcus Mariota just chucking the ball into the turf and stuff. There is something here with Kyle Pitts, and I think, man, if the Falcons got Kirk Cousins, watch out. Kyle Pitts might go nuclear. I think if you watch the Falcons, it's pretty obvious that Pitts is good. He's just been in unfortunate circumstances. But maybe not quite worth the fourth overall pick. But my match made in heaven for Brock Bowers, and I don't know if he's going to be there when they pick. I think they have the 15th pick. I would love to see Brock Bowers go to the Colts. I think that would be just such a sick player-team combination with Shane Steichen as their offensive coordinator and the makeup of the Colts as them being this freakishly athletic yet big and gritty team. You have Anthony Richardson at QB, Brock Bowers at tight end, Jonathan Taylor at running back. Still a pretty good offensive line that they've done a good job of retooling. Michael Pittman at receiver. Just what an awesome, uniquely built team that would be if they could get Brock Bowers. And I think Shane Steichen is the kind of coach that could really get the most out of him. We saw what he did with Dallas Goedert over in Philly. Not that Goddard was a product of his system or anything. Goddard's obviously a great player too, but Man, that is a pick that I would love to see personally. I think Brock Bowers would be majorly successful with the Colts. I think he'd be good pretty much anywhere he went, but oh, that would be awesome. That is like as a Georgia fan, I would love to see Brock Bowers go to the Colts and just as an enjoyer of football. Jack saying Bowers is the most talented player in the draft, in my opinion. It's him or Marvin Harrison Jr. I can't disagree with that. If you're going to talk about like relative to your position, you throw out positional value. I don't hate it. I honestly don't. Like if there was a corner as good as Brock Bowers is as a tight end, they'd go top 5 for sure. Yeah. And also saying, I would love to see Bowers in Seattle with Grubb as OC, but there's no chance he falls to us. I mean, yeah, I guess you could really trade up if you wanted to get crazy, but that would be cool too, right? Ryan Grubb is his name, right? Came over from Washington. That would be an interesting fit. You'd get a little bit of smash to the well, I guess DK Metcalf has some size and power, but then you've also got JSN and Lockett at least for now, so that would be a fun fit too. You can add a little bit more to the receiver room there. And yeah, again, let's not overthink this. Let's not let Brock Bowers fall too far. He's obviously very good. Let's not outsmart ourselves. Ooh, game solved with a good question. Who do you think would win, the best UFL team or a team constructed out of the best 2024 draft prospects? I'm not going to pretend like I know too much about the UFL. Let's take a look at a UFL team here. I think it would probably be the prospects that would win. But let's take a look at some of these teams here. I'm seeing some names. Matt Corral. Wow. Adrian Martinez. Holy smokes. DeAndre Francois. I think I said his name right. Wow. Oh my goodness. I'm seeing a lot of Case Cookus. Vikings Twitter legend. These are just the quarterbacks, by the way, but I will say, and no disrespect to any of these quarterbacks, but just based off the quarterbacks I'm seeing, I would say the prospects for sure. Like I would say Caleb Williams and Drake May are better than any of these guys. Marvin is definitely better than any of these guys. Roma Dunze, excuse me. I struggle with his name for some reason. Adunze. And Malik Neighbors, and then Brock Bowers, and you got Joe Alton. Yeah. I would say the prospects would win pretty comfortably, but that is an interesting question. That's what I would have like never thought of otherwise. Antoine Winfield Jr. is an interesting one. With the Buccaneers paying Mike Evans, I think Winfield might be gone. And he's another guy I'd love to see on the Vikings. I don't think that's going to happen because it's a lot of money, and you know, we could always use another DB, but safety is not nearly as pressing of a need. I do wonder, like, because you always like to think, oh, like, what contending team is going to sign these guys, right? But oftentimes, like, the big free agent signings, it's from these teams that have a lot of cap space that just, like, need to spend some of it, and some of these guys just taking the big payday. So if Winfield doesn't come back to Tampa, you know, it might be easy to think like, oh, the Bengals or something, but we could just as easily see him like end up on the Titans, you know. No disrespect to the Titans, but Mile Marker with a good question saying live from the mountains where? Yeah, so I guess you weren't quite in here yet when I had mentioned this, and I moved out to Cleveland, Georgia, which is up in the mountains of Northeast Georgia. I got a new job. I started about a week and a half ago at this point, writing for the local newspaper. So I'm covering local news, some features, city government, county government, stuff like that. It's been pretty cool so far. It's been a cool experience. You can see the new setup behind me. I'm in a new studio. And yeah, and also you're right, Henry. They did tag Antoine Winfield, but I'm up in Cleveland, Georgia. This is my first stream from up in the mountains of Northeast Georgia. Beautiful, beautiful place. I can't wait for fall when all the trees turn and it's going to be lit up orange in the horizon. That's going to be beautiful, but it's about to get hot before we get to fall, which I have to brace myself for the Georgia heat again, but we'll get there. But you are right, Henry. They did tag Winfield. Whoopsies. And the Bears tagged Jalen Johnson too, which makes a lot of sense. There were trade rumors around him last year, weirdly, but I don't know. He's just too good of a player. You can't let him go. The Bears are building something here. The Bears are kind of building something. They have 2 top 10 picks. Their defense really came on strong at the end of the year last year, right? They're probably going to upgrade at quarterback. They'll probably use the first pick at quarterback and then just go BPA at 9, which should be a pretty good player, pretty good looking class. A lot of other quarterbacks are going to go. I could see this team in the playoffs, maybe. I think we were maybe just a year too early with the Bears hype a little bit. They've done a pretty good job building this team out. They have. And it looked like a dumpster fire the first half of the season. Ever since they got Montez Sweat and their pass rush got serious, their defense really came together. I mean, their linebackers were great. A lot of people are like, oh, they spent so much on linebacker, but they've turned out to be great. Jalen Johnson's a special player. I like Jaquan Brisker a lot. Tyreek Stevenson had a pretty solid rookie year. I mean, there's pieces there. And then on offense, DJ Moore was the receiver they needed. Their offensive line has come together nicely. So, I don't know. They've got something here. A lot of people are like, why would you bring back Matt Eberflus? But I honestly think having that continuity on defense is important. And I know not everyone might like Shane Waldron here because of what he did with Seattle. But I think he's an upgrade over Luke Getsy. And who knows, maybe Waldron will do a little bit better in a different spot. But I honestly like the decision to bring back Eberflus. I thought he saved his job with how well they played down the stretch, and they might be onto something. We'll get to Snead in a sec. Let's check chat here. Saying excellent. Piney Woods. Not familiar with Piney Woods, to be honest. Oh, LaGrange. Okay. In southern United States. Oh, snap. I did not know about this. It looks like it might just be outside of us. I don't know if this is what you're referring to or not. Let me just show you on a map, actually. How about that? Let me just go. All right, so if I pull up the map here, not to dox myself or anything. You can't see my actual address, but so here is Cleveland, Georgia, right here. Let's turn on the terrain layer so we can really get a sense. I was gonna just do this, but the satellite's cool too. But here we are in Cleveland. You can see me. Please don't hunt me down. No, I'm just kidding. I trust you guys. But yeah, so we're a little bit north of Atlanta. We're down near the foothills of the Appalachians. I think we're like just a part of it, just barely. But yep, Northeast Georgia. This is where I am now. This is where I moved out to. And I'm working for the local newspaper, the White County News. We're out in White County, Georgia. Has about 30,000 people in the whole county. The city I live in has 3,500 people. So I'm in a very small town, and it's been a different experience, but I've been learning a lot so far. I'll say that. And it's funny because, I'm from North Dakota, but prior to this, Athens was the smallest place I ever lived in. And Athens has like a population of maybe 80,000, I think. So this has been a culture shock for me, but I've enjoyed it so far. Jack saying, call me biased, but when you draft a guy like JSN and use him primarily in screens and give Kenneth Walker 10 touches a game when he's averaging 5 yards a carry, that is not good decision making. Yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more out of JSN this year. I think there's something there. I think he is a good player. We saw a lot of glimpses of it. I would be interested to see how he performs in Grubb's offense this upcoming season. And Kenneth Walker, we talked about this last time too. Yeah, was not utilized very much. We saw a lot of DJ Dallas and there was Charbonnet a little bit. Yeah. Mile Marker saying, makes Fargo big city. It does. It really does. It's kind of funny to say, but I mean, Fargo is the biggest city I've lived in. Actually, it might be Sioux Falls, technically. That's where I was born. I lived there for like a year and a half. But all right, L'Jarius Sneed. He's an interesting one. We'll do a few more of these here. He's an interesting one because the Chiefs did tag him, and I did know about this. Shout out Henry for like helping me out here when I've been lacking on the tags a little bit. Sneed did get tagged, but there have been trade talks with him. The Chiefs are reportedly open to trading him, and that is very, very interesting because he was an all-pro level corner for a Super Bowl winning defense last year. Like a not just a defense that won the Super Bowl, but a great defense. And he's younger than Chris Jones. You could argue that corner is more important than interior defensive line. And yet, it seems pretty clear that if the Chiefs had to choose, they would rather keep Chris Jones than L'Jarius Sneed. And I also think another big reason behind this decision, right? The Chiefs don't exactly have abundance of cap space. They'll have to get a little creative. They've already cut some guys, right? They cut MVS. I do wonder if they're going to make a play for a receiver. And I'm not saying that they're going to like shock the world and bring back Tyreek Hill or something, as crazy as that would be. But I don't know. I'm not going to say the Chiefs got lucky because they didn't. Obviously, they were, obviously, they were an elite team and they were a deserving Super Bowl winner. But I think they kind of know, like, we kind of got away with having some bad wide receivers this year. Like we probably shouldn't have won the Super Bowl with that wide receiver core. Like, we really got lucky we were able to get a ring out of that. And I just wonder if they're like, they probably feel like we need to upgrade there. And, you know, like I said earlier, when you're talking about Chris Jones, they have Spags. They have this great defensive coaching staff. They've developed plenty of other corners before. Maybe they're going to bet on themselves that they can do it again. They'll get a nice return for Sneed. I don't know if they'll get a first for him since they tagged him and it's only a 1-year deal. They might have to settle for a second, but I think you take a second for a guy that probably would have been gone in the first place. And then you can move some money around, bring back Chris Jones, go get a wide receiver, draft a corner maybe in the first or second round. Like, there is a vision there. And I will say, Mile Marker making a good point. Honestly, if you want me to give a good match, the Lions. The Lions would make a lot of sense for L'Jarius Sneed should he go somewhere else, right? He's a very good corner in man coverage. The Lions run a lot of man. They could use another corner. I'm not trying to be mean or pick on Cam Sutton, but he was kind of getting picked on by opposing offenses a little bit. If they could bring in Sneed, that might genuinely be a move that puts them over the top and gets them in the Super Bowl. I mean, he is an all-pro level corner. Jack's saying Trent McDuffie's first-team all-pro. I'd keep Chris Jones over Sneed too. I get it. I mean, yeah, they've got talent in the secondary already. And McDuffie is just such a special player in that he can operate in the slot. You can kick him outside a little bit. He's even got some background at safety. So I totally get it. Man. Michael Pittman. Oh, he got tagged too. Man, just bad news for the Panthers, right? This was how they were supposed to upgrade at wide receiver because, well, I guess they have some cap space. But, you know, again, like you see this number, they can always move it around a little bit. Now, if you're down here, it's a little bit tougher because, woof, you know, you're in the hole already. You got to make some moves just to get to even. And you got to sign your rookie class. But man, you know, I was saying earlier this week, like the Panthers really have put themselves in a bad spot because how are they going to get better now? They gave up so many draft picks for Bryce Young, right? They need a wide receiver. It's like, man, they just have to throw the bag at Michael Pittman and hope he says yes. Not that Michael Pittman's a bad player, but like they're going to have to overpay for Michael Pittman and hope he solves their problems. But you can't always do that because, again, usually the best players don't hit free agency. The teams won't let them. So he got tagged too. This was supposed to be such a great wide receiver free agency class for them. T. Higgins was supposed to be there, and Michael Pittman was supposed to be there, and they're just all getting tagged. Mike Evans got brought back. We already talked about Danielle Hunter, but yeah, Mike Evans is back. Tyron Smith, he got cut, I believe, right? I don't want to say that was a surprise because Tyler Smith, who they'd kind of been grooming to replace him, had been playing really well. And as great as Tyron Smith has been, he has not been healthy recently, which they talk about up here. You know, I don't know. He is still a very great tackle. There are some teams that could use a tackle. I don't know. I was going to say the Chiefs could get him, but they would need to really If they want to get him and bring guys, again, it's going to be tough. But the Chiefs could use a tackle. Their tackles are not good. And that would be such a Chiefs signing. Like, oh, we got Tyron Smith too, by the way. But the Jets, I mean, I could see the Jets making a big push for him. They need a tackle. That might actually make a lot of sense. Tyron Smith to the Jets. I like that. All right, we'll do a few more here. Maybe we'll go down to like 20 or something. We'll just hit a few more interesting ones that I want to talk about. I don't really want to talk about Kendall Fuller, to be honest, unless anyone really wants to hear my Kendall Fuller take. Leonard Williams. He got traded from the Seahawks to the Giants. I don't really know. Wait. Other way around. I am so silly. Right? The Giants traded him. I cannot spell. He got traded to the Seahawks from the Giants. How was he with the Seahawks, Jack? I know he was pretty good with the Giants. Like, he really started to, like, grow into his potential. It's easy to remember, he was, what, the 3rd overall pick? 6th overall pick. He was a very high draft pick for the Jets back in 2015. He's been in the league for a while now. But, he's good with the Jets, but he really developed into his own with the Giants. He had 4 sacks in 10 games with the Seahawks. That's not bad. But you'd mentioned earlier, Jack, that you want him back, right? So I could see that. Again, they're going to need someone, whether they bring back Williams or they bring in Madubuike. Probably one of those two things. But overall, he's had a good career. I would say he has been worth the capital invested into him. I don't remember what the Seahawks gave up to trade for him, though. Maybe Seattle. I don't know. If you're Seattle, it's like, man, we gave up all this for him. We want to bring him back. Hollywood Brown. This could be the guy that the Panthers end up getting. And honestly, I kind of like Hollywood Brown. I think he's a pretty good receiver. He had a good year with the Cardinals last year. He was always good with the Ravens. But again, he's just like he can be a good one on a bad team, but he would probably be a 2 on a good team, if that makes sense. And that just, a lot of it speaks to the depth that we see at wide receiver in today's league, but yeah, I could see him going to the Panthers. The Panthers gave him like a Christian Kirk type deal where they just pay him a lot, and he'll end up being pretty good for them. But if you're the Panthers, you got to get someone. I don't even think Bryce Young is that bad. I don't know how anyone could succeed in that situation. Bryce Huff at 18, that's kind of surprising. I mean, I guess we're getting to that point. Not that Bryce Huff is bad. He's an excellent pass rusher, but that's really what he is he's a pass rush specialist. One thing that I try and do, and this is just semantics, right? Like, this is just me being me, right? And I do this all the time, and I'm not saying that people who do this are wrong or anything, but, because he's designated as an edge, right? And people will say, like, edge rusher. But me, I'm like, well, actually, if you're an edge player, like, you just play on the edge. Your position is not pass rusher, Bryce Huff is an edge rusher. He rushes the passer. That's what he does. He comes in on passing downs, and he blows by the tackle, and he overwhelms them. The tape on his pass rush reps is ridiculous. He is an absolute storm. He is a one-trick pony, and is a good trick to have. He can't do a whole lot outside of that, and you'll see that in his snap counts and just when he's on the field and when he's not on the field. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with having a good pass rush specialist. I think if I'm the Jets, I try and bring him back, because that has kind of been what their defense has been built around, as great as their corners are. Like, the backbone of their defense is this sick, deep pass rush, and having Bryce Huff, who can just come in on 3rd down and just blow by you because Quinnen Williams is drawing a double team and no one can stop Bryce Huff off the edge. If you're the Jets, you're a defensive team at the end of the day. Bring him back. Just bring him back. If not, he could be like the best rotational rusher in the league, but he's not. I don't know that he's like an every down type of guy, but man, he is a sick rotation piece. We've been going strong here, almost 2 hours. Look at that. Still got 8 people in here. Can't complain. Always love it. Always love it. All right, DJ Reader at 19. Dealt with some injuries this year. He's been a beast. I mean, one of the more underrated players in the league, honestly. And I do wonder if Cincy is going to bring him back or not, because they've got to start making some tough decisions financially with Higgins looming and Chase looming, Burrow's contract kicking in. They've got a lot of other free agents. He's older and he's a defensive tackle, so that might mean that he's gone. Now, naturally, I think, defensive tackle, I would love the Vikings, and it would make a lot of sense, right? They need some beef in the interior. They do. It is a big problem. I don't know. I could have done my homework a little bit more before this one, but I don't know. All right, we'll wrap it up here with Patrick Queen. We'll do a solid 20. Maybe this will be like a little series, and we can do some more later on, and we can do some other stuff. I do want to talk draft at some point. That might be its own stream. At one point, I want to do a mock draft stream. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And we got to get some more games going. I've actually got some very fun plans as far as games go later. Let's just say I've got another series in the works. I got to order something first for that to happen. But once I order it, actually I can do two different things with it. Let's just say I need to get a capture card. And once I get a capture card, I've got some exciting plans for what I'm going to do with that. But we'll wrap up here with Patrick Queen. Linebackers are hard to find these days, and I'm scrolling, and I don't really see any other linebackers, specifically off-ball linebackers up here. And again, going to say the same thing that I did. Oh, snap. Am I lagging? Hold on. Did my stream crash? Or is my computer just being weird? Oh, no, we're good. We're good. Okay. It was loading for a while. Sorry about that. I had an infamous stream crash back during wildcard weekend. Some of you guys might remember that, where my streams kept crashing. The internet just wasn't doing so hot back in Fargo. But fortunately, it does not seem to be one of those incidents again. Thank goodness. Shout out Kinetic Windstream internet out here in Cleveland. But Patrick Queen. All right, we'll wrap up with Patrick Queen here. He's another guy whose career really took off once Mike Macdonald came in. He was kind of labeled as a bust prior to this year. I mean, he was a first-round pick, which you don't see very often from the linebacker position. It was a later first-round pick, but it was a good spot for him to be, right? You get to be linebacker in this Mike Macdonald defense. You've got Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith around you, and you know, he kind of just got to stick what he does best. He got to go downhill a lot more. Roquan got to handle a lot more of the tough assignments. There's always been talent with Patrick Queen. I wonder what his market is going to look like. I don't think he's going to get an insane amount of money. And PFF kind of has like 18 mil a year. I mean, that's a decent amount. 50 million guaranteed. That's a pretty good contract for a linebacker. Baltimore's got to bring some of these guys back, right? I feel like Baltimore is probably going to choose between Queen or Madubuike. I mean, what's their cap situation like? If I can find it. Wow, they're in the red. Ooh. You know, the Ravens, this was kind of their year, a little bit. It was kind of their year. And it wasn't even just that they lost Mike Macdonald. They lost a lot of their position coaches to defensive coordinator spots. I think they lost their linebackers coach and their defensive line coach, something like that. So it wasn't just losing their defensive coordinator. They lost a lot of their coaching staff. I don't think the Ravens defense will be good again next year. I don't think it'll be quite as good though. I don't know. I mean, you want to talk about a Howie signing? Honestly, I could see Patrick Queen going to the Eagles, and they do need a linebacker. That is a good one to end it on right there. Patrick Queen to the Eagles. That one actually makes some sense. I could see that. It fills a need. The Eagles have some cap space. And again, you know Howie. Howie loves to make a splash. Howie loves to make a splash. All right, we hit 20 free agents today. Not bad. That was pretty good. You know, good stream back. I've been settling into a routine a little bit here. Obviously, I've got the work grind now. I'm really feeling like an adult. It's a 9 to 5. I show up at 9 and I leave at 5. That is the definition of a 9 to 5. But still gives me plenty of time to do stuff like this, thankfully. And I'll still always have time for football once the season comes around, and we've got the draft coming up. You best believe we're going live for the draft. And as I teased a little bit earlier, we'll be doing, just general chat streams like this where we'll be talking ball, maybe talking about free agency, the draft, or just hanging out, playing games. But I've got some fun plans. I'm gonna get a capture card, and here's what I'll say. Let me gauge some audience interest in here, because outside of Sporkle quizzes and GeoGuessr, I've never really played games before on this channel. And here's an idea that I had that I thought would be a lot of fun. And this is where I would need the capture card for. What if I did a throwback Madden franchise? I'm talking like Madden 11 or Madden 12 on the Xbox 360. Those are like the oldest Maddens that I have. It's going to be a series called Coach Doc, where I'll do you could do like fantasy drafts for franchise. I'll do a fantasy draft franchise from like an old Madden. So it'll be guys like Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Troy Polamalu, whatever. And I'll play like a few games a week, right? I'm going to get into character as Coach Doc. And, we'll build this giant lore, this spiraling universe around this franchise and just have a lot of fun with it. I don't know. That's something I think I'm going to do. Give a little teaser for you guys. But I do need to order a capture card for that if I am going to broadcast. But if you guys are interested, we can make that happen. And I don't know. I don't know how well I explained that, but you guys will really see it once I get into it. I've got some exciting plans for that. And then we can just go from there. But yeah, as I'm playing, you can always get some takes off, just talk general ball, but oh yeah, just something to do, right? When it's going to be like June and there's nothing going on and it's like, there's like OTAs or whatever, but it's like, man, I would just kill for like something, like give me like Panthers Commanders Thursday Night Football or something. But Tyler's saying her NCAA where I take NDSU to the top. I love it. Maybe that'll be another one too. All right, people are rocking with the idea. All right, Coach Doc is going to be a thing. Believe me, I've got some insane plans for that. It's going to be a whole thing. Coach Doc. All right. Tyler asking, do I watch March Madness? Oh, I do. Believe me, I do. And I'm excited to fill out a bracket again. It's getting to be about that time where I start paying attention to college basketball. I'm not going to lie. I have no idea who's good and who's not, but maybe that'll help me when filling out my bracket this year, because it did not go so hot last year. Also saying it's crazy, man. It is, right? How have you been over at UGA? Just taking care of business, wrapping things up? It's crazy. Home stretch, right? Oh, it's exciting. And Mile Marker saying, really enjoyed the show. Glad you're back. Good for you on the job. Nice to see all your energy and analysis as sharp as ever. Go Bison, and of course, go Lions Pride. Thank you. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. You know what? Go Bison. Horns up, baby. All right. That's all I've got for today. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. It's good to be back. Dropped the video yesterday, streamed today, and you best believe there's going to be more of this where it's coming from. It's the off season, but not really. It's football 365 over here in Dr. Pigskin Land. All right. Y'all have a good night. I love you guys. Till next time, the doctor's out.